Managerial Accounting, Example 4B. Please read and be familiar with this example, and we will begin. So this is a make versus buy setting. It's a setting in which a company is currently making a part, this 3/8 inch keyless chuck, and they have an offer from a local supplier to sell them the part for $18 per unit. So the product manager or the production manager goes to the accountant and says, "Can you please tell me the cost of the KC38? And the accountant goes to the production cost report and pulls out the standard report of the cost of a KC38, and the KC38 costs $21 per unit. And so the plant manager initially says, well, hey, if it costs me $21, I can buy it for $18, I can save $3 a unit. But there's this voice in the back of the plant manager's head that said, I think I remember when I took my MBA, there was a managerial accounting class, and there was something about overhead costs not necessarily being the right number for the information or for the question that I need to answer. So the production manager went back to the accountant and said, listen, here's what I need that data for. I've got an offer to buy this part for $18 a unit. So I need to know what's going to happen if I stop making and start buying. And so the accountant, now with better information, knowing exactly what the cost information is going to be used for, the accountant can say, well, what you need to know is that direct material is variable, direct labor is variable, and of our overhead cost, of this $10 of overhead, half of it is fixed and half of it is variable. So the variable portion of the overhead we're definitely going to save. Also, what happens if we stop making this part and stop buying it? We would be able to stop renting one of the machines that we use, and that saved rental cost is included in the fixed overhead, and that would be $1 per unit. So even though the fixed overhead allocation might not actually change until next year when we update our allocation rate, we will actually save real money. Okay, so given this data above, the purchase price of 18, the full production cost of 21, but our better information about overhead, how much would Stefani's net income change if it stopped making the KC38 and bought the part from Acct? So we've got two things to worry about here. First is the relevant cost to buy the part. And I'll do it both on a per unit basis. We'd pay $18 per unit to buy the part. Or, if we wanted to think of it for the 5,000 units a year, the total cost we would incur would be an additional $90,000. So the cost to buy the part is $90,000. But what are the relevant costs we save by not making the part any longer? And I'll make life a little bit easy, and I'll copy and paste a few of these rows here. So our material cost is $7 per unit, our labor cost is $4 per unit. Remember, our accountant told us both of those are variable, so we're going to save those costs. The allocated overhead per unit, we're told half is fixed and half is variable. So I'm going to cut this down by 5, and I'll call that the variable overhead per unit. And we also have the fixed overhead we're going to save by not renting the product anymore, not renting the machine anymore. And so we're going to save $1 per unit of fixed overhead. So in total, we're going to save $7, $11, $5, and $1, or $17 of overhead. $17 of cost. For the 5,000 units, it'll be 5,000 times the 17, or $85,000. So how's this going to affect our net income? Well, we're going to start spending the $90,000, so I'm going to put that in as a negative. We're going to subtract that amount, and the $85,000 that we're going to save is going to be a positive, so I'll add that. And so we're actually going to be $5,000 worse off. Now, that doesn't mean we don't do it. Maybe the part from Acct is higher quality. Maybe the machine that we're using is old and inefficient, and we're going to have to replace it soon anyway. So maybe in the short term, we're willing to spend the additional $5,000 because we think in the long run that'll help us out. maybe we've got a good relationship with Accurate Tool and Die, and we need to keep that relationship going. Maybe we outsource some other products to them that are really important, and we want to keep them as a good relationship. So there could be reasons why we decide to spend the $90,000 instead of the $85,000. But we need to recognize that we're doing that for a good strategic reason, and we need to recognize that by outsourcing the part, we're actually going to spend more. Remember, the original, our first pass at it made us think we're going to save $3 a unit, but we're actually going to spend $1 per unit more. Okay, so that's our first part. Given the data we've got, how much would net income change? And income would go down by $5,000 given all the assumptions we have. Now, here's another reason why we might want to outsource the part, even though it costs us a little bit more. Maybe currently by making the part, we're bearing an opportunity cost. We are we're currently unable to make additional products because our capacity is being used making this part. So let's take a look at that example. At the next manager's meeting, the production manager says, hey, Accurate offered me to sell this part for $18. We're only going to save $17, so I don't think I'm going to go ahead and do it. And the marketing manager says, hey, you know what? I think you ought to go ahead and take that because we've got that capacity in the factory. If we free that up, our customers have been asking us for more of this TR16, and we just don't have the capacity to make it. So if we can use our factory capacity to make this other product instead, we can make profit. We can make $20,000 in profit. So maybe it's worth it to go ahead and outsource this part to Accurate. So let's see if that changes our decision. So in this case, we still have the same relevant cost to buy. Accurate hasn't changed their offer to us. They're still willing to sell us 5,000 units at $18 a unit for a total of $90,000. What are the relevant costs we're going to save by not making? In this case, we're still going to save materials, labor, and the variable overhead. We're told that the rented machine would still be rented because we're going to use this machine to make the new product. So we're not going to save this $1 per unit here. So the cost we're going to save is going to be $16 a unit, or $80,000, but we're also going to earn additional contribution margin of $20,000. Now both of these go the same direction. Both of these are going to increase our net income. Cost savings will obviously increase our net income, and earning additional contribution margin will also increase our net income. We can think of this as out-of-pocket costs saved, and we can think of the additional contribution margin as opportunity costs saved. So our total cost savings, including out-of-pocket and opportunity cost, is $100,000. In other words, stop making, start buying, and start making the additional TR16 parts will make us better off by $100,000. So we put those two things together, and our change in net operating income, we're better off by the $100,000, we're worse off by the $90,000 that we have to spend, and to put these things together, and we're better off by $10,000. This points out two important things about relevant cost. First of all, your overhead allocated per unit is probably not going to be the right number. It's relevant for its purpose of helping generate financial statements, cost of goods sold, cost of inventory on the balance sheet, but it doesn't mean it's variable or relevant or incremental to a particular decision you're going to make. Second of all, you have to be very careful to figure out, if I make a decision, what's actually going to change. Am I actually going to stop renting the machine, or am I not? Am I actually going to be able to make another product with the capacity, or am I not? And this is something where you're not going to have necessarily a list or a source of data. You're just going to have to sort of figure out, what are the effects on my business of making this change? And there might not be any one person who knows all the effects on the business of making a change. This is why managers have to communicate things to one another and help each other figure out the effects of decisions on the business overall.